Hi, welcome to another session of Mentoring for Coaches. The aim of these sessions are to help you gain a deeper insight behind why these sessions were created, what are the hidden insights that could come from these sessions, and a general overview on how to deliver these. By watching these sessions, you will get a much more in-depth feel for these sessions, and this would help influence how you end up delivering them. So before we start, please have a read of the worksheet related to this session. And once you have, let's start. So today's session is on public speaking. Now, we have a lot of public speaking sessions, probably in every single year. One, it's a key component of learning. I remember growing up in school, I went to a boarding school, and every single weekend we would do public speaking. It became one of the most important skills that I have today, is being able to confidently speak in public. Now, before we teach public speaking, we need to understand the layers that come about in public speaking. For example, and this is essentially what the whole program does, and this is what coaching does. We always try to go a lot deeper than the actual sessions. So public speaking is a skill at the top, and a lot of schools, institutes, all focus on teaching you this. Why? Because measuring a skill is very easy. To be able to measure public speaking, the person just goes up, speaks in public, and you can measure certain aspects of their speaking. Very easy. However, what they don't focus on is that before you became a good public speaker, there's a level of, I would say, some level of confidence that came about. Maybe they're in tandem and they can be interchangeable, but kind of confidence. Then you've got the motivation to even want to do this. And then some level of determination that then leads to the motivation. But then below all of that, underneath the bottom, is the belief that if I try to practice public speaking, I will get better. That core level is really what we're trying to work on. And in our sessions, we go down to that sort of level. So we've got three areas that we look at in this session on a deeper level. Now, this session is called I Want to Be. I want to be in terms of, I want to be this when I grow up in terms of careers. It's a question that I don't really like. What do you want to be when you grow up? But it's a question that society always asks kids. So we thought, if you can't beat them, join them. Let's work with that question, but let's flip the question so it has deeper insights. One of the reasons why I don't like this question is because how is a 10-year-old supposed to know what they're going to be when they grow up? When I was 10, half the jobs that exist today don't even exist anymore. Imagine if I said I wanted to become a person that creates NFTs. What? It wasn't even a thing. Imagine if I said I wanted to become a cryptocurrency trader. These are jobs that didn't really exist. So that asking that question in itself, I feel sometimes stresses kids out. But it's a question that's asked, so we're going to flip it in this session. And that's why we specifically created this session to tackle this thing. So, three things. One of the reasons why we're asking students this, and we're doing a public speaking session on this, is because we want students to get an insight and understanding of what other students are saying. Why? Because so far, their main education, they're grade 1, they've learned a lot of things from home. If their family are a family of doctors and engineers, then they're probably going to know that doctor and engineering are jobs that exist. They wouldn't know about other jobs unless they speak to other students, and the other students are like, oh, my mum and dad are this. And then you're like, oh, that's an interesting job. So aim number 1 is to broaden their horizon of all the different jobs. So you can factor that in. That's one of the aims as us coaches. Then the second kind of deeper aim, and why we created this, was we wanted to move away from what job you do as being important to ensuring you are the best at anything you do. So that's why we've called it being a champion. And even the hadith that we have put in, I will just read the hadith. Allah will be pleased with those who tried to do their work in a perfect way, narrated by Muslim. So the third thing is how they will help the world with this career. Now, children generally are quite selfish because they haven't developed empathy yet. And at this stage, they're starting to develop it. And what we're trying to do is instill a level of service, contribution, empathy throughout everything they're doing. And so we're inputting it here that, oh, by the way, this job that you're doing is not just for you, you're doing it for everyone else. On these kind of questions, we shouldn't really expect too much of an answer, because they're not going to know how this really helps, unless you're like a doctor and it's quite easy. Some jobs they might not know. But it's worth throwing that question in anyway. So those are the three things. Understanding other jobs that exist, making sure you're a champion at everything you do, and how you will help the world. The aims of the sessions is quite straightforward. Objective, obviously you've met it once they've delivered a speech. Now, some notes for the coaches, additional notes. Now, it's important to face the child, not to interrupt, ensure you look encouraging. If someone can't ask how they're going to help the world, you want to remove your teacher talk as much, or your coaching talk as much as possible. Tell other students to answer that. For example, let's say a child says, I want to become a graphic designer. And then you ask them, how's that going to help the world? And they're going to be like, oh, I don't really know. Instead of you saying, how about it helps the world like this? You say, can anyone else think how a graphic designer could help the world? And if they find it too difficult, you can then probe them. So what does a graphic designer do? They design animations. Well, when you watch animation, do you enjoy it? Why do you enjoy it? Ah, okay, cool. So is it to bring enjoyment? Is it to bring color to people's lives? Is it to make things look prettier? Why would we prefer prettier things over ugly things? Oh, because it makes our life happier, right? You want to go down that kind of route to just elaborate on certain things. A very interesting point, and this is the last point on this session, is being aware of what jobs trigger you. So, for example, you are much more likely to be like, oh, that's a really good job if someone says a job that you have a higher value for. So, for example, if someone says I want to be a doctor, they're like, oh, that's great. Doctors are really helpful. You want to avoid that. Because if another child says, I want to become a gamer, you naturally, subconsciously might not give it the same amount of praise, and they'll be able to feel it. So you want to give everything the same amount of praise, the same amount of attention as possible. So those are the main points for all of this session. I hope this was useful. If you guys have any questions, as always, reach out to me or speak to your head coach.